I'm Dan McChesney. I'm the Director of the Office of Surveillance and Compliance at the Center for Veterinary Medicine. I'd like to welcome you all to this public meeting on pet food today, especially on the provisions of FDAAA. We have a pretty broad group of folks here from industry, consumers, and the government. And we're very much looking forward to your input. What I'd like to do today is introduce our first speaker, Dr. David Atkinson, who is the Associate Commissioner for Foods. And the point I'd like to make, I guess over the past year I've gotten to know David fairly well. And the one thing I would like to really say here is that when he first came into the job shortly after the melamine situation broke, it wasn't because of melamine, but it was because of a variety of other issues that were going on the human food side of the house. We've had spinach, salmonella in spinach, and just a whole variety of other issues out there. But the one thing that I would really like to emphasize is that when David came into his new job, and the commissioner obviously put him in that job, it really raised the status of animal feed and pet food to that being equal with food. In the past, we've always sort of been the stepchild, where our Center for Food Safety did a lot of things, had a fair amount of money, went out their own way, and pet food and animal feed was always an afterthought. When David came in, and he was really heavily involved in the melamine situation, there was a realization that he brought to it as really a unifier, unifying the food side. He said, yes, he came from the Center for Food Safety. He said, yes, there's a food issue out here, but he also realized there was a feed issue. And now we have equal footing. So CVM is always at the table on all food and feed issues, all food issues. That we're always there. We've been in China, kind of been around the world and done the tour on food. We're part of every Tuesday and Thursday morning calls on food protection. We're heavily involved, and I think that's solely due to David and his vision that there needs to be one food safety system. And I applaud him for that, and with that I think I will introduce him. One other thing I will say is David is a physician, infectious disease person, practiced in England, but spent a lot of time at the University of Maryland and Tufts doing public health. And I think he was at CIFSTAN in a public health role, not as an infectious disease role. David?
Well, good morning, and thanks, Dan, and please don't hold the fact that I'm a physician against me, but I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all as well for today's meeting. To Dan's point, what I wanted to do is just take a few moments and not sort of get in the way of good discussion today, but really just to sort of take a few seconds and talk about what we're doing at FDA in terms of protecting the food supply. And as Dan has said, this is not all about human foods, it's about foods, period. Foods for humans and food for animals. In my role, what we're endeavoring to do is to integrate foods issues across the whole agency. And that was essentially why we developed the Food Protection Plan that was published last November. I'm sure, hopefully, most of you are familiar with that. If you're not, there's lots of information available on the FDA website about it. But let me just sort of say a bit about that and how what you're doing today plays into that. The Food Protection Plan is really a big shift from FDA being predominantly reactive to FDA being proactive. That's what we want to do. We want to build in preventative controls up front. And that is what this plan is heavily focused on. But the plan isn't just all about prevention. It's got three elements. It's got prevention, it's got intervention, and it's got response. And the prevention piece is like, let's build a safety in up front, whether it's domestic food feed or imported food feed. To do that, we need to understand where the risks are. We need to work with industry, work with other stakeholders in terms of the role of industry, corporate responsibility to ensure that they are producing a safe product, again, whether it be a domestic or an imported product. Around that, we need to be understanding what are the mitigation steps, what are the things that need to be done to prevent the problems in the first place, building the safety in up front. The second major element on intervention is more the FDA role and the regulator's role of how do you focus the inspections and the sampling based, again, on risk. We're all very familiar with limited resources. And with the volumes of food and feed coming into the United States, we can't inspect it all, so it needs to be focused on risk. That intervention piece is focused on the risk. And if we do that right, targeted inspections, targeted sampling, we'll be verifying that those preventative controls are working and reducing the likelihood that a product would actually make it to a consumer, whether it be human or animal, and make them sick. Inevitably, things will slip through the cracks. It's going to happen. So the third important element here is response, and ensuring that we have a rapid, robust response system. And that includes getting a better handle on traceability, tracing back and tracing forward. It includes responding quickly to signals. What I mean by that is when something begins to go wrong in the agency, we're able to get a handle on those early signals of a problem, whether it's an adverse event, a consumer complaint, a positive sample, so that we can build that picture rapidly and respond quickly. Finally, the part of response is when something does go wrong, is ensuring that we communicate adequately down to those who need to know. And that's across the board. And certainly we have had problems and difficulties around that, of getting that word out as quickly as we would like. I think probably on the animal side, that may work better than on the human side. This prevention, intervention, response structure. It needs to be risk-based. That's critical. It's focusing on food safety as well as food defense. So that's unintentional as well as deliberate. And the fact that last year we went through the melamine situation certainly has highlighted our vulnerabilities to somebody deliberately doing something to the food supply. Now, I don't put that in the same bucket as bioterrorism. I don't believe that was done with the intent of actually causing harm, but it was clearly deliberate. So going from growing or production right through to the consumer, looking at that whole piece. And importantly, a big shift for us is FDA beyond our borders. And traditionally what we have done is focused on inspecting at the port of entry, again based on where we think the risk is, but we are now putting more and more emphasis on trying to understand what is going on in foreign manufacturers, working with industry to get a better handle on that, and to develop hopefully voluntary certification programs which will allow that kind of information to be verified and to be used to help us determine may proceed rates at the port of entry, because there have to be appropriate transparency in this, appropriate controls, and of course appropriate incentives for people to use it. Overall, as we do that, we are looking to try to build this integrated system. It isn't going to happen overnight. It isn't going to be quick. It is going to be dependent on the resources that we get. We certainly got some new money in 2008, and hopefully we'll get some new money in 2009 to move these things forward. As Dan alluded to, a big part of this FDA Beyond Our Borders has been things we've been doing in China. And pet food and pet treats is a focus of that. The initial work is actually being focused on some human foods, aquaculture, and certain kinds of ingredients. But those ingredients can wind up in pet food because it's wheat gluten, it's rice protein, and it's corn gluten. So they can certainly get into the human food supply as well as the food supply for animals. So I think the discussion today on the FDA Administration Amendments Act is going to be critical in helping inform that process. I've given you the big picture, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the pet foods, which is the focus of today's discussion, that they're safe, and that all of these parameters are built in: the prevention, the intervention, and the response around pet foods, that they're properly labeled, and that consumers know what's going on, and that we are building that transparency into the system as we move forward. And obviously, again, the process today is part of that transparency, is getting that public discussion going. So with that, I will end. I thank you for allowing me to make a couple comments. Wish you well, and again, extend a warm welcome to what I'm sure will be a very interesting dialogue and helpful for all. So appreciate it. Thank you. Eric, let me hand it over to you. Thank you.